Alright, so today we are going to be making scrunchies. So kind of going with my hair evolution, I was told that if you use satiny fabrics for your pillowcases and also your hair ties, that your curls will actually last much longer and it won't be as damaging or straining on your curls. So I went to the store to try to find some scrunchies to use, but I didn't really like any of the material that they had, and they kind of seemed like, to me, expensive. Like, I haven't bought a scrunchie probably since I was like 10. So I guess, you know, it's a good thing that like they're kind of like back in fashion now. But I didn't really like any of the materials, and I thought they were like for one, it was kind of like $5. So I really didn't want to pay that much. So I want to show you how I made my satiny, soft, and kind of giant scrunchies. So this is the satin fabric I picked up from my local craft store. It's definitely nothing expensive, and all of this only cost me 97 cents. And as you can see here, you really don't need that much fabric to make some scrunchies. So usually this fabric comes in like big rolls, so I just asked them for like 6 inches of fabric. So make sure to grab some elastic while you're also at the craft store, and you can decide what width of elastic you prefer for your hair. Having a sewing machine is definitely helpful, but not necessary for this. So this is a little test I made, but I definitely want it to be fluffier and bigger. So that's what we'll be making now. So I used the rest of my fabric, which was about 29 inches. So for when deciding what size of fabric you use, the longer the fabric is on like an average scrunchy elastic, the more ruffles it'll have. The wider the width of the fabric, once it's folded in half, it means that the larger or more fluffy the ruffles will be. So you have to sew the open ends together. Usually you do this around 1/2 inch or 1 full inch, and then the rest of that will be your ruffle size. If you have to trim your fabric down to the right width, make sure to flip it over to the side of the fabric that you won't see once it's finished. Take a marker and just mark along the fabric the width you want. I happen to like around 6 inches. So just cut off the excess fabric there and then flip it onto the nice side. So you'll want to fold it back over onto itself, kind of hiding the good fabric inside the middle. So next we're going to pin together the open sides of the fabric at 1/2 inch. This is where we're going to be sewing it together. I measured the first pin and then kind of just eyeballed the rest. So I did cut off one of the ends because it will be easier for later if both of the ends are kind of like a similar size and shape. So then it was time for me to learn how to actually use a sewing machine again. It's been a while, so thanks, Mom. So then just sew down on the 1/2 inch mark where we place the pins. Because it's a satiny fabric, it does kind of pull a little, and you kind of have to pull on the sides to kind of keep it taut. But luckily, all these mistakes are really easy to hide because it's all going to be scrunched up anyways. And yeah, I did kind of break the machine multiple times while trying to do this. So it looks a little warped right now, but trust me, it's gonna be fine when it's all put together. So then make sure to remove all the pins and then cut off any excess threads that you might have on there. And next what we're gonna do is flip the material inside out. So I would suggest taking a large safety pin and just pinning it to one side of the opening so that you can kind of stuff it back into the opening, and then you're gonna pull that safety pin all the way through. So once you got it all the way through, you'll be able to grab the safety pin and then continue pulling, and it will be completely flipped inside out. And we'll have all of our nice fabric now on the outside. So grab your elastic and cut it to the length you want it to be. So I use my wrist to measure. Just make sure to leave a little extra length because you'll need it for sewing it together. So grab 2 safety pins and put one on each side of the elastic band, pin it on one side, and then feed the other pin through. So basically you just want to get that elastic through the fabric tunnel that we've kind of made. And just the safety pins make it just a lot easier for something to grab on and kind of push the material over it. Kind of similar to what we did before with like flipping it inside out. So once you have your safety pins, you can kind of pin it together and see if you like that shape and size and how many ruffles you have going on. And then once you're happy with it, you can sew the elastic ends together. I just went over a couple times on the machine and it held together really well. So we're finally at the last step, and it's just sewing the loop shut. So line up the seams from our previous stitch, and also I suggest rolling the ends inwards just to give yourself like a smoother edge. You do have to hand sew this part, so I'll put a link in the description of the invisible stitch that I used. So end it with a tight knot, and then you're all finished. So the one on the left is the one that we just made. So I wanted to see how fluffy and ridiculous I could make it, so I decided to use all of the length of the blue fabric I had to make this next scrunchie. So I did make a couple sizes. It was a lot of like trial and error of which sizes that I liked. So I will show you what I ended up with. This was the first one I kind of started with, which is just a really small one. It's pretty tiny. And because my hair is quite thin when you pull it back, I didn't really think I needed like the giant one. But I do like the way this one looks actually a lot. So I made this one and then made one even smaller, which I can like barely fit my finger around. And this one I was using for sleeping, and actually really liked this one. I tried it last night and it works pretty well for just keeping that little top notch bun. I'll try to show you. Wow, this is a good look. Yeah, so this is how I would sleep. My hair is actually really short under here, so it always stays kind of down, but it's fine because since it's like the underlayer, it usually just becomes flat after the second day anyways. So this is the smallest one I have, and works really well for just kind of throwing your hair up like that. So yeah, I actually really like this one for sleeping. This one's pretty good. And then the size up is going to be a little bit easier to kind of just ponytail once around, and it stays really well. And then the next size up, the biggest one I have, this one I think I have to, well, first of all, it fits really comfortably on the wrist, which is kind of important because there's been so many hair ties that have strangled my wrists, so I really wanted one that actually fit my wrist specifically. So this one is good. But I do kind of have to tie it around twice. But it's pretty comfy, and I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. The amount of fabric I used on this one is about a half, so it's not as fluffy as the blue one. The blue one I used the whole length of fabric just for this one, and it's around the same size, maybe even a little smaller than the loop I made here, so it doesn't quite fit my wrist as comfortably. Yeah, it's kind of a little too tight. So there's a lot of fabric on this one little band, but I like this one a lot. I think it's just kind of like a little ridiculous and really, really fluffy. So you can see how many folds of fabric there are. This one I also really like. It's a little bit trickier getting in my hair. but I don't actually have to wrap it around twice like I would with the other big pink one. So there it is. So that's all I've made so far. It was all my different sizes here. I think it's really awesome that you can make these pretty easily. And it's also nice that when you're making them, you can kind of like figure out the sizes that you want to have. Because I definitely wouldn't want to necessarily sleep with this giant one in, but I do love this little mini one for sleeping. So yeah, I think it was like really fun to make. Definitely tested my patience a little bit with all the sewing and everything, but I definitely recommend giving this a try. And even if you don't have a sewing machine, you can definitely hand sew. It is possible, maybe a little time consuming, but totally possible. And the great thing about this is that it really didn't cost much at all. It's really fun to pick your own like crazy colors, patterns, and like whatever you want. You can really, I don't know, get creative with it. I'm definitely not used to working with fabrics, and I'm definitely not used to kind of sewing and stuff, but if I can do it, that totally means that you can do it as well. Thanks for watching, and if you do give it a try, let me know how it goes for you, and I will see you next time. Bye.